It's been said that fiction is a projection of reality, that it's simply the conjuring of a novelist who expresses our deepest fears, ambitions, beliefs, and ideas into a tangible form, such as a book or film. The art of a period is usually a reflection of the period itself, and novelists routinely draw from real places, real events, real facts, and real issues of the day. But what if they drew from real people? Take your own life, for instance. Your life could easily be retold as anything from a comic book to a 19th century adventure film. Paintings, sculptures, songs, the works. Over and over again, the story of you is told. And as long as the context and settings were different enough from previous retellings, no one would notice. Well, almost no one. There are some who have noticed a pattern too frequent to be accident, too consistent to be coincidence, and too prevalent to ignore. A reoccurring theme, increasingly willing to unveil itself. The symbolism in question is that of a secret society known as the Illuminati, a group associated with black magic, Satanism, and believed by many to be behind much of humanity's bloody past and its ominous future. A group who commonly uses eyes, pyramids, suns, and snakes in its symbolism, and not shy about drawing imagery from the Bible and Egyptian mythology either. But to discover these symbols' meaning is hopeless by analyzing a single retelling. With the context and the window of the timeline having been altered, it's difficult to discover which parts of the retelling are literal, which are symbolic, and which ones were simply added to tweak the story far enough away from previous retellings. But if we instead concern ourselves with only the overlapping aspects of these stories, the meaning surrounding this symbolism becomes clearer. There is hardly a single soul who hasn't entertained the thought that Hollywood might be running out of stories. But maybe they're not running out of stories. Maybe they're running out of ways of telling the same story. Because if you were telling the life of just a few people repeatedly, that's exactly what would happen. When looking for the most blatant use of Masonic and Illuminist symbolism, one need only see The Man Who Would Be King. The Man Who Would Be King was released in 1975, but the short story that it's based on was written in 1888 by Rudyard Kipling. It's a story of two vagabond Englishmen, Peachy and Danny, played by Michael Caine and Sean Connery, who are considered to be criminals by the British Empire. So they hatch a plan to travel to a distant, primitive country intending on becoming kings and returning with all that country's treasure. After a long, perilous journey, they arrive to Kafiristan and initially met with hostility, but are slowly accepted as heroes as they conquer quote-unquote devils and people in neighboring villages. Eventually, Danny, played by Sean Connery, is mistaken for a divine being when a charm adorned with the Masonic compass and all-seeing eye is discovered around his neck. He rules all of Kafiristan for a short time. He also violates the contract he signed before arriving by taking a wife. Soon he begins to believe the lie that he's a god, and disaster befalls his kingdom. Peachy, played by Michael Caine, decides to take his half of the gold and return to England. But before he can, Danny is bitten at his wedding and revealed to be only human when he's seen bleeding. Eventually they're punished. Danny thrown into a canyon, and Peachy scarred and suffered for 1,000 years. This movie has parallels with the story of the Antichrist in both Christian and Islamic tradition. A man arrives claiming to be God, survives a fatal injury, performs false miracles, and eventually punished by being thrown into a pit. Even 7 trumpets are heard in the movie, while in the Bible, 7 trumpets signal 7 phases of the apocalypse. And the Muslims say the Antichrist will arrive out of Kafiristan, the same country mentioned in the movie. The Man Who Would Be King has an additional similarity when compared to the apocryphal Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch's primary focus is the fallen angels from the Garden of Eden. The Book of Enoch contains 2 characters, Thamyaza and Azazel, which are listed among the leaders, and sound quite a bit like Danny and Peachy from the movie. In both cases, the 2 sign a contract and receive a gift that will make humans tremble. Both taught people how to make weapons and conduct themselves in war, and, just like in the Book of Enoch, Azazel is thrown into a pit in the middle of a desert, while his associate Thamyaza is burned. And similar to the serpent from the Garden of Eden, Danny tells the woman that she surely won't die, and then later is bruised in the face by her, exactly like the serpent from the book of Genesis who tells Eve she won't die if she tastes the fruit, and then later, the serpent is told that the woman will one day bruise his face. One of The Man Who Would Be King's most blatant retellings can be found in Stargate. Stargate is about an ancient portal found in the desert. A group of soldiers who walk through the portal arrive to another world that resembles ancient Egypt. When they arrive, One of the group's members, Danny, played by James Spader, is discovered wearing a charm with the all-seeing eye and soon learns that the local people have mistaken him for a representative of the Egyptian sun god Ra. Soon, the real Ra learns of the group's presence and begins to kill and capture them one by one, including Daniel, who is brought back to life by Ra. Eventually, the few remaining soldiers kill Ra and free the local people from his tyranny. Danny, the group's archaeologist, decides to take a wife and remain with the primitive people as a leader while his comrades return home. The similarities between Stargate and the Man Who Would Be King are too specific to be accident. Both have the same name.
Daniel. I'm Daniel.
And brother, Daniel Dravert, which is I.
Both were given a charm with the all-seeing eye on it before departure.
I have something for you.
Yeah. Take this.
Both were mistaken for divine beings when discovered with the charm.
The Eye of Ra. It's the Egyptian sun god. They think he sent us here.
That's what saved us.
Blimey. You think I'm a god?
Both tried to be culturally sensitive.
I don't think we should eat any food here.
I don't know, they might consider that an insult.
You dirty old brute. Different countries, different customs. Mustn't be prejudiced, Peachy.
Well, we don't want to offend them now, do we, Daniel?
Bloody heathens. Different countries, different customs. Mustn't be prejudiced, Danny.
Both include a scene where the slave girl is rejected.
No. You don't have to do that.
Now, wait a minute, Ducks.
Daniel from The Man Who Would Be King survives a seemingly fatal wound, while Daniel from Stargate suffers a fatal wound and is brought back to life. Both decide to stay and take a local for a wife, while his partner insists on going back home.
Do this?
Yes, I'm sure.
You gonna be all right?
I'm gonna be all right.
I ain't going, Peachy. What? You heard me.
The two movies even contain similar scenes in landscape. The Road to El Dorado is another veiled retelling of The Man Who Would Be King, with even more similarities than Stargate had to offer. The Road to El Dorado is about two guys considered criminals by the Spanish Empire. But before the two are punished and imprisoned, they escape the transport boat and arrive by sea to a primitive land. Using a map as a guide, the two hatch a plan involving plunder of El Dorado, the city of gold. When the two arrive in El Dorado, they are mistaken for divine beings after performing a false miracle. They become the immediate rulers of El Dorado, the lost city of gold, and their plan to steal the city's gold moves forward with ease. But, similar to Danny from The Man Who Would Be King, one of the two quote-unquote gods is seen bleeding, and it becomes evident to the city's high priest that they aren't gods, but human. The high priest attempts to kill the two would-be kings, but fails and is himself killed. One of the two gentlemen, Michael, who is mistaken for the sun god, wants to stay and rule the primitive country, while the other, Tulio, wants to go back home with his half of the gold. But before the two can return to Spain with their loads of gold, they run into trouble with an old enemy, Cortez. The two guys, Michael and Tulio, are finally forced to sacrifice their gold in order to escape. The Road to El Dorado contains several scenes that seem like cartoon copies of The Man Who Would Be King. Comparing the pair from The Man Who Would Be King and the pair from The Road to El Dorado isn't hard. Both are criminals.
But both of you richly deserve to be in jail. I have your records before me.
Both make a pact to stay away from women.
She's whoa, she's trouble. Wait a minute. No, listen. We are partners.
We're partners.
We have a plan.
Chell is off limits?
Bravo! Chell is off limits.
2, that you and me will not, while this matter is being settled, look at any liquor, nor any woman, black, white, or brown.
Both led by a map to a primitive country. Both hatch a plan involving plunder.
New plan. We find the city of gold. We take the gold.
Then we'll subvert that king. We'll seize his royal throne and loot the country 4 ways from Sunday.
Both hold on to the tail of a horse, a prophecy surrounding the coming of both.
As the prophecies foretold!
Both mistaken for gods and later laugh about it in a private setting.
Think we're nuts. It's an entire city of suckers.
They think I'm a god?
Both perform false miracles. Both put an end to the high priest sacrifices.
Stop! Hold on, laddie buck! There'll be no execution of prisoners in this army.
And now you will, of course, wish to have the losing team sacrifice.
There will be no sacrifices. Not now, not ever.
Off your hunkers. No more groveling. We ain't going to put your city to the torch. Nor hang you in chains, nor rape your daughters.
Both stand to gain a ton in treasure. Similar to the man who would be king, one decides to stay and rule, while the other intends on returning home with his half of the gold. Michael, like Danny from The Man Who Would Be King, begins to believe the lie that he was meant to rule. Both are revealed to be only human after being seen bleeding, and both will watch their treasure wasted in the panic of escape. Sun scenes were obviously done simply to draw the connection between the two movies. The Road to El Dorado contains much of the same symbolism of the previous two films, along with having a virtually identical storyline: trumpets, pyramids, and sacrifices. And here, it's clear that, like in Stargate, Michael has been mistaken for the sun god shown here putting on his sun crown. You even have the people with the strange masks, and an arrival with a pale horse. In the Bible, there are 4 horsemen, or riders of the apocalypse. One is white and the other is pale, like the sickly shade of a corpse. Then there's this episode from the 6th season of The Simpsons, called Homer the Great. In this episode, Homer finds his friends acting secretive and receiving preferential treatment. After some investigating and a bit of meddling, he discovers that his friends Lenny and Carl are members of a secret order called the Stonecutters. But masonry is obviously what the Simpsons creators had in mind. Masonic compasses and squares, along with pyramids, suns, and all-seeing eyes are throughout the interior of this Stonecutter Lodge. Homer then learns that Grandpa Simpson is a member, making Homer eligible for membership. Here's the whole lodge singing about the conspiracies they're involved in.
Who controls the British crown? Who keeps the metric system down? We do. We do.
Who leaves Atlantis off the maps?
Who keeps the Martians under wraps?
So he's accepted, and soon a very familiar scene unfolds. He's initially met with hostility, but the high priest finds a mark on him that signifies divinity. They mistake him for a god and immediately becomes the leader of the group. Soon, he begins to believe the lie and his followers turn against him.
I always wondered if there was a god, and now I know. There is. And it's me.
You're not a god, Homer.
A mad dog or a god?
We gotta kill him!
Take it easy.
This episode is clearly rooted in Rudyard Kipling's story, and Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons, does a good job at making the Freemasons look like no more than a mischievous country club. Dogma is yet another copy of this story. Dogma is about 2 angels who want to get into heaven regardless of the wishes of God, and another group who has been charged with stopping them. Upon arrival, both pairs begin punishing the wealthy.
You and your board are idolaters. You are responsible for raising an icon which draws worship from the Lord. I don't believe in voodoo, but I do believe in this.
He shall pay 22 cases of compensation of 4 cows to each wife.
Both are unable to consume alcohol.
Inebriated. Loki tells God he quits, which ruins it for the rest of us, because from that day forward, God decreed that angels could no longer imbibe alcohol.
Contract. Tell His Highness we've given up strong drink.
Both met in the army.
How'd you meet?
We were stationed together.
Last time Danny and me came through the Khyber Pass, we fought our way, yard by bloody yard, and General Bobs called us heroes afterwards.
Both suffered for 1,000 years.
To accomplish here. You too know what it feels like to be cast aside. You've only dealt with the pain a few years. I've dealt with it for a millennia.
3 summers and 1,000 years ago.
Both are seen bleeding. And as usual, one angel wants to stay while the other wants to go back home.
I'm going back to Wisconsin. We're going home, Loki. And no one, not you, not even the Almighty himself, is gonna make that otherwise.
The movie actually has Enoch displayed for a brief time, and a vast portion of the Book of Enoch is devoted to angels. Then there's Star Wars, a slightly more subtle retelling of the same story, and once again, traces of the same two characters. Han Solo and Luke Skywalker are cultural icons, but they appear to be a bit more than that. Han Solo from Star Wars and Danny from The Man Who Would Be King have quite a bit in common. Both are longtime smugglers,
Boy, it's lucky you had these compartments.
I use them for smuggling. I never thought I'd be smuggling myself in them.
Rifles? Well, heaven help you if you're caught with those at the border.
Gun running isn't exactly new to us.
both have a brainy best friend.
Now what? This is some rescue. When you came in here, didn't you have a plan for getting out?
He's the brains, sweetheart. Which means she's got
14 2/3.
Both were honored as war heroes with their brainy best friend.
Last time Danny and me came through the Khyber Pass, we fought our way, yard by bloody yard, and General Bobs called us heroes afterwards.
Both ended up snowblind, which is blindness due to extreme cold.
I can't see.
Your eyesight will return in time.
Danny went snowblind.
Both pairs have a grudge against an empire.
I've seen a lot of action.
With all we've been through, sometimes I'm amazed we're in as good condition as we are. What with the rebellion and all.
You know of the rebellion against the Empire?
Great country. Or was, till the bureaucrats took over and ruined everything. Because them that govern spend all their time making up new laws to stop men like you and me from getting anywhere. And whose loss is it, eh? Why, England's, of course.
We go back a long way, Lando and me.
Do you trust him?
No. He's got no love for the Empire, I can tell you that.
Do you suppose if a man thought twice he'd give his life for Queen and country? Not bloody likely.
Both pairs have been mistaken for gods.
I could be mistaken. They're using a very primitive dialect, but I do believe they think I am some sort of god.
Both are impulsive warriors.
Get back to the ship! Certainly has courage.
What good will it do us if he gets himself killed? Come on.
And what, may I ask, did you think you were playing at? Charging the enemy single-handed?
And even though there's no good reason to threaten someone with 1,000 years of torture, since humans don't live beyond 130, they are still both threatened with 1,000 years of suffering.
You will therefore be taken to the Dune Sea and cast to the pit of Karkun, the nesting place of the all-powerful Sarlacc.
Doesn't sound so bad.
In his belly you will find a new definition of pain and suffering, as you are slowly digested over 1,000 years.
And both have stood with their friend at the edge of a pit in the middle of a desert with people crowded around intending on pushing them in. And again, the characters with the ropey hair get a scene or two. Even Chewbacca can be accounted for. According to Muslim tradition, like Han Solo, the Antichrist is friends with a furry creature who's so furry one could not tell its front from its back. This furry creature identified itself as Al-Jassas, which is Arabic for the assassin. And according to Jordan Maxwell, Yoda is in fact a real character who the Freemasons actually believe in.
According to the reference works, there is a little spiritual entity that guides the world Freemasonry, and they call him Yoda. And in the reference works, you'll see this little creature with the pointed ears, and he's called Yota. Yota goes back to Judah, or Judah, which goes back into British Israel World Freemasonry.
Jesus Christ also makes an appearance in Star Wars as Anakin Skywalker, aka Darth Vader. Darth Vader, the infamous villain from Star Wars, was originally named Anakin Skywalker, and his life bears many similarities to the life of Jesus Christ. He was immaculately conceived.
Who was his father?
There was no father. I carried him, I gave birth, I raised him. I can't explain what happened.
Declared the chosen one, prophesied to come, powerful magical abilities, rejected by temple leaders, wants to preserve life using his magical abilities, storms a temple. If you're not with him, you're against him, and becomes the leader of a large army. And I'm sure it's just a coincidence that the lady George Lucas chose to play Darth Vader's mother, a Swedish actress named Pernilla August, also played as Mary in the made-for-TV movie Mary, Mother of Jesus in 1999, the very same year she first appeared in Star Wars. Christian Bale, who would later play as Batman, also played in the movie Mary, Mother of Jesus, playing as Jesus himself. Regardless of who played the part, it's clear who George Lucas had in mind when writing for Darth Vader. George Lucas's first full-length film was THX 1138. Akin to the setting Aldous Huxley's Brave New World takes place in, THX 1138 takes place in a dystopic police state where the citizens are medicated, under constant observation, and reproduction is tightly controlled. Named after its main character, THX 1138 was released in 1971 and describes a world where natural human emotions, like sexuality, are suppressed through a regimen of medications that's mandated and distributed by the state. The movie is about a nuclear technician who, like most, is emotionally inexperienced and emotionally dependent on machines instead of other people.
Yes.
I haven't been feeling very well myself.
Yes, I understand.
I don't know, maybe it's me.
Yes, fine.
I needed some Panura last night. I feel as if something
Excellent.
odd were happening to me. Something
Yes.
I can't understand.
Could you be more specific?
His roommate and future lover begin substituting his medication so that he, like her, will begin feeling emotions the medications are designed to inhibit. They begin a love affair and are arrested because of it. She ends up dead while he is sent to detention. He meets up with a couple of idiots and eventually escapes. The world described in the film is exactly the goal of the New World Order. For example, here's an excerpt from an interview of Aldous Huxley regarding his novel Brave New World.
But simply because the Brave New World pattern is probably a good deal more efficient than the other. But if you can get people to consent to the state of affairs in which they are living, the state of servitude, the state of being, well, it seems to me that the nature of the ultimate revolution with which we are now faced is precisely this, that we are in process of developing a whole series of techniques which will enable the controlling oligarchy, who have always existed and presumably always will exist, to get people actually to love their servitude. People can be made to enjoy a state of affairs which, by any decent standard, they ought not to enjoy.
THX 1138 is very revealing, has decent special effects, and is very boring. So boring, in fact, that even those with good taste will find the car chase at the end refreshing. George Lucas both wrote and directed this movie. Another movie that gets its material from reality is Men in Black. Men in Black is about two law enforcement agents who work for a secret government agency responsible for regulating alien activity on Earth. It appears that much of the movie's content were inspired by John Keel's The Mothman Prophecies. John Keel was an early paranormal researcher who, in 1975, published a book called The Mothman Prophecies. The book's main focus were the events in a small town called Point Pleasant, West Virginia in 1967, where countless UFO, giant bats, and Men in Black were reported. Here's a few excerpts from John Keel's book, The Mothman Prophecies, and clips from the two Men in Black movies. Here's John Keel, commenting on how Men in Black always give themselves all too common names. UFO lore is populated with mysterious visitors claiming inordinately common names like Smith, Jones, Kelly, Allen, and Brown.
Yes, ma'am, I'm Special Agent Mannheim. This is Special Agent Black of the FBI. We'd like to talk to you about your visitor.
I'm Dr. Leo Manville, Department of Public Health. This is Dr. White.
I'm Sergeant Friday from the 26th Precinct.
Here's stories of people with lapses in memory after seeing a bright light. A young couple sprawled together in the backseat of an old jalopy on a deserted dirt road in the isolated back hills east of Ravenswood, West Virginia. It was starlit, moonless night in that spring of 1967, just warm enough so that the pair were able to strip to the buff comfortably. At about 10:30 p.m., a blinding bluish light poured in through the windows of the parked car. The next thing we knew, it was gone. We jumped into our clothes and got the hell out of there. Another funny thing, when we got into town, it was after 12:30. We couldn't figure it out. It seemed like we looked at that light for only a couple seconds, but somehow it must have taken 2 hours. If you review the thousands of UFO contact reports, you will find that many of them begin with the appearance of an entity holding some kind of flashlight, which is shown directly at the witnesses. In other instances, the entity approaches the witness and suddenly flashes a light at him, which causes paralysis. In some cases, witnesses are asked for curious things by peculiar people. Max's Kansas City is a famous watering hole for New York hip crowd. In the summer of 1967, an oddball character wandered into that restaurant, noted for its oddball clientele. He was tall and awkward, dressed in an ill-fitting black suit that seemed out of style. His chin came to a sharp point and his eyes bulged slightly, like thyroid eyes. He sat down in a booth and gestured to the waitress with his long, tapering finger. "Something to eat," he mumbled. The waitress handed him a menu. He stared at it uncomprehendingly, apparently unable to read. "Food," he said almost pleadingly. "How about a steak?" she offered. "Good." She brought him a steak with all the trimming. He stared at it for a long moment and then picked up his knife and fork, glancing around at the other diners. It was obvious he did not know how to handle the implement. "Did you hear of anyone, especially an Air Force officer, trying to drink Jell-O?" Mrs. Ralph Butler asked. "Well, that's what he did. He acted like he had never seen any before. He picked up the bowl and tried to drink it. I had to show him how to eat it with a spoon."
Sugar.
I've never seen sugar do that.
Give me sugar in water. More. More.
Many of the Men in Black sightings reported in the Mothman prophecies depict them as moving awkwardly. From what I can get from him, he was looking for insurance. Only he kept saying he wanted trip insurance. He told her that he had also visited the office of the messenger. He spoke in the garbled, sing-song manner of so many of our weirdo visitors, and moved in an unsteady, almost drunken way. There are many reports in the book about people with strange eye problems, bulging eyes, or eyes that are out of sync. Edward Christensen was interviewed by a Men in Black and says this: "His nose and mouth seemed relatively normal, but his eyes were large, protruding like thyroid eyes, and set wide apart. One eye appeared to have a cast, like a glass eye, and did not move in unison with his companions." The Cherokees have a tradition that when they migrated to Tennessee, they found the region inhabited by a weird race of white people, who were apparently quite civilized. They had one problem. Their eyes were very large and sensitive to light. They could only see at night. The fierce Indians ran these moony-eyed people out.
Los smoking.
These eerie Men in Black gave everyone the creeps, and even though they tried desperately to make others comfortable by grinning, even their grins looked evil. Here's a Mrs. Bryant describing her encounter with the Men in Black. "Were they Negroes? No, they didn't have Negroid features. Their face seems kind of pointed. You know, pointed noses, pointed chins, high cheekbones. There was a kind of evil look about them. I was afraid I was going to get robbed or attacked." Mrs. Bryant again commenting on their voices. "Well, it was all pretty silly. They just wanted to know my name, where I was from, what I did for a living, things like that. Sometimes it was hard to understand them. Their voices were kind of sing-songy and high-pitched. It was like listening to a phonograph record played at the wrong speed."
Do you have any idea how much that stings? Real nice. But that's the last time I elbowed a friend.
Witnesses report impossible acrobatic maneuvers. Here's Mr. Keel talking about Mrs. Bryant and cattle mutilators on her farm. "Had she ever caught the culprits in the act?" "Several times," she said. "I'd see them out in the field and go after them with a shotgun, but they always got away. They're tall men, and they wear white coveralls, which is kind of stupid because they really stand out in the dark. And they can certainly run and jump. I've seen them leap over high fences from a standing start." The preferred automobile of the Men in Black appears to be large, out of date, and black. Here's Connie Carpenter's retelling of an attempted abduction and the cars the Men in Black are often seen in. She said she could positively identify it as a 1949 Buick. The driver was a clean-cut young man of about 25 and was wearing a colorful mod shirt, no jacket, despite the cold weather. His thick black hair was neatly combed, and he appeared to be very suntanned. He spoke with no noticeable accent. The car, though nearly 20 years old, was so well kept it looked like new. Even the interior had a look of newness about it. Here's a description from a college student named Tom. It was a very old Buick, he reported, but it was very well kept. It looked brand new. It even smelled brand new.
Unlimited technology from the whole universe, and we cruise around in a Ford POS.
These men in black left behind little trace. Mr. Mallette took down the license number on their Volkswagen, and when Mary had the police check it out, it proved to be non-existent. This business with the license numbers was repeated over and over, and in many places. Witnesses would carefully note the plates on the black Cadillac and mysterious panel truck, but when the police ran a routine check, the computers came up with a blank. 4 men in black arrived to an elderly woman's home in April of 1967, immediately after a severe rainstorm. They had high cheekbones and very red faces, like a bad sunburn, he told me. They were very polite, but they said that my land belonged to their tribe and that they were going to take it back. What frightened me was their feet. They didn't have a car. They must have walked up that muddy hill, but their shoes were spotlessly clean. There was no trace of water or mud where they walked in my house.
Dress only in attire specially sanctioned by MIB Special Services. You'll conform to the identity we give you. Eat where we tell you, live where we tell you. From now on, you'll have no identifying marks of any kind. You will not stand out in any way. Your entire image is crafted to leave no lasting memory with anyone you encounter.
The Mothman Prophecies, an exceedingly boring movie released in 2002, was loosely based on the book. In the movie, the main character named John Klein, played by the exceedingly stale Richard Gere, was loosely based on John Keel. Although there are a few parallels between the experiences of the main character and those of John Keel, the movie for the most part does not delve into the book's more paranormal content. The movie has no trace of men in black, UFOs, or even the appearance of a Mothman. The viewer is forced to be content with drawings, and as for descriptions of these Mothmen, nothing except their large, red glowing eyes are mentioned. It's clear that the film was made for middle-aged women with no interest in UFOs, the paranormal, or well-written stories. In fact, the only thing the movie got right was the bridge disaster, and an alien who used a contactee to speak directly to John Keel. Aside from that, the movie was void of any of the book's true content and focus. Since the movie was little help, what does the book say about these Mothmen? Descriptions of these Mothmen throughout the book are similar. Here's a few excerpts. Here's a report from the late 1800s out of Brooklyn, New York. He had wings and performed aerial acrobatics over the heads of the crowds of sunbathers at Coney Island. A Mr. W.H. Smith first reported these strange flights in a letter to the New York Sun, September 18, 1887. The creature was not a bird, but a human winged form. He maneuvered at an altitude of about 1,000 feet, sporting bat wings and making swimming-like movement. Witnesses claim to have seen his face clearly. He wore a cruel and determined expression. Here's a description of the Mothman from a West Virginia girl driving home from church in 1966. It was at least 7 feet tall and very broad. The thing that attracted her attention was not its size, but its eyes. It had, she said, large, round, fiercely glowing red eyes that focused on her with hypnotic effect. As she slowed, her eyes fixed on the apparition, a pair of wings unfolded from its back. They seemed to have the span of about 10 feet. It was definitely not an ordinary bird, but a man-shaped thing which rose slowly off the ground, straight up like a helicopter, silently. Its wings did not flap in flight. This report is from a group of soldiers in Vietnam in 1969. All of a sudden, I don't know why, we all three looked out there in the sky and we saw this figure coming towards us. We saw what looked like wings, like a bat, only it was gigantic compared to what a regular bat would be. After it got close enough so we could see what it looked like a woman, a naked woman. She was black. Her skin was black, her body was black, the wings were black, everything was black. But it glowed. It glowed in the night, kind of a greenish cast to it. These descriptions of the Mothman bear an uncanny resemblance to demons depicted in the dark and medieval ages. In medieval depictions of demons, the beings were humanoid, but had wings. In fact, demons and the devil were commonly depicted as giant man-like bats throughout the period. Over and over again, these malevolent supernatural beings were adorned with the bodies of men, but wings of bats. Here's just a few depictions of so-called devils from the time. But the Mothman prophecies had traces of yet another creature of so-called myth and legend: vampires. Vampires have long been associated with giant bats and hypnotic powers, but there's something else. The men in black themselves. Witnesses describe hypnotic gazes, pointed features of the chin and nose, high cheekbones, jet black hair, and long tapering fingers. These are the general attributes of every Dracula character Hollywood has ever regurgitated. Here's what a witness said about shaking the hands of one of these mysterious characters. The rear door opened and a man climbed out with a big grin on his face. He was about 5 feet 8 inches tall, with dark skin and oriental eyes. He solemnly shook hands with the girl. His hand was as cold as ice, she would later report. Here's a girl named Jane, describing her encounters with a quote-unquote vampire woman who she first met working as a librarian. In early June, Jane began to see the librarian wherever she went. On June 6th, while walking through a local department store, the woman appeared behind a chest rack. She wore the same old-fashioned clothes and tried to speak to Jane in quote-unquote broken English. There was something wrong about her speech and movement. It was as if she were dead, Jane said. When asked if she lived around Babylon, the woman laughed in a strange, hysterical way, like an emotionally disturbed person. Like flying saucers, it delighted in chasing cars, a very unbird-like habit, and it seemed to have a penchant for scaring females who were menstruating, another UFO hairy monster peculiarity. Elsewhere throughout the Ohio Valley, dogs, cows, and horses were dying suddenly and mysteriously, usually from surgical-like incisions in their throat. Animal disappearances and death go hand in hand with UFO phenomenon. The most puzzling aspect of these deaths is the absence of blood. Often the carcasses seem drained of all blood. The wounds don't bleed. No blood is in evidence in the grass or dirt where the victims lay. 2 points confounding investigators have been the absence of blood and footprints. Even on warm days with the carcass freshly killed, there has been no bleeding on or around the animal. Some believe the cattle were drained of blood. No human tracks have been detected near each mutilation, even in fresh snow. Europe has been plagued with phantom animal killers for generations. Sweden had a plague of this sort of thing in 1972. The extensive vampire legends of Middle Europe were undoubtedly based on such incidents. Vampires were cloaked beings, often accompanied by strange aerial light who could paralyze humans and animals in their tracks. There are even more recent reports of vampirism.
It was a pretty horrific thing to go through.
Robert McDaniel planned to have some fun with his new friend Tiffany Sutton when the young petite woman undressed and asked to tie him up.
You wouldn't expect that this kind of thing's going to happen during sex, but that's exactly what happened. You know, she tied me up and just began an assault.
Sutton began slicing McDaniel across his neck, back, and arms, leaving a nasty blood trail. The 43-year-old escapes, is chased with a pickaxe, and passes out.
And I came to just seconds later in a fetal position on the floor, and she was behind me, drinking my blood.
Yes, drinking his blood, cutting him with her own special knives.
They were just skulls, different types of skulls, and they were ceremonial of some sort. There were 3 sizes, small, medium, and a large. Even though I continued to try to get up and walk, and I would pass out, and every time I would wake up again, she would be drinking these wounds from my bag.
Moments before police arrive, Sutton pulls out another surprise, what's believed to be a satanic book authorizing her to take possession of his belongings.
She asked me would I sign this thing, I just simply scribbled something. So I don't know, that must be the book you're talking about.
McDaniel's memorable Valentine's Day has certainly left him scarred for life.
Never think about sex the same way again, will you?
No one will be tying me up for a while, no sir.
The Muslims also have something to say on the subject of giant bats and vampires. They speak of the jinn. The Muslims say jinn are beings of free will whose bodies are made of quote-unquote smokeless flame, as opposed to humans whose bodies are made of clay. The word genie comes from the Arabic word jinn, which means demon. They say that the jinn were the children of the devil himself, had populated earth before humanity, and filled it with corruption during this time. In the Bible, they are called the seeds of the serpent, the Nephilim, the Rephaim, which were the children of the fallen angels. The Muslims say that there are several kinds of jinn, or demons. The first kind are physical beings with wings. The second look like dogs and snakes. The third are spirits, and others look human. It is said that the jinn never go out during the day, and are on average stronger than humans. The bodies of the Jinn are said to be made from smokeless flame. Demons are commonly shown with lights in their eyes, while vampires are frequently depicted bursting into flames as if their body were made of fire. In UFO circles, these Mothmen are called Dracos because it has been suggested that this creature originates from the Draco constellation. Whether that's correct or whether their origins are a little closer to home, it's unclear. But what is clear is that they've been with us for quite some time, appear to have a hidden alliance with our government, and as for vampires, they exist. And speaking of giant bats and vampires, that brings us to part-time billionaire, part-time vigilante, full-time vampire, Batman. And like a lot of other movies, Batman has more to it than it seems. In Batman, the strongest reference point is the very well-known fictional character called the Joker. In 1989's Batman with Michael Keaton, the Joker was played by Jack Nicholson, and in The Dark Knight, the Joker was played by the now-deceased Heath Ledger. Repeatedly, the writers make it clear who they had in mind while writing the Joker script. Here's one of the cards the Joker passes out during his crime spree. A card he gives out more than once has what obviously is a devil on it. And in this scene, we see a number of cards. There's the devil card again, then what appears to be a red horse with horns drawn in a dragon-like motif, then two dragons intertwined. Throughout The Dark Knight, Heath Ledger persists on licking his lips and rapidly extending his tongue, like a snake. Now here's Revelation chapter 12, verse 9. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So he's the dragon, that old serpent, called the devil. And by the end, just in case there was any lingering doubt, the Joker proceeds to build a pyramidal mountain of cash and puts a criminal on top. But the other Joker, played by Jack Nicholson, also gives his identity away.
I was in the bath one day when I realized why I was destined for greatness. You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight?
You ever dance with the devil by the pale moonlight?
Then, at the end of the movie, he says,
"Shall we dance?"
And then you see Vicky Vale and the Joker dancing together in the pale moonlight. Just another clue. Even the Riddler drops hints that he is in fact an old foe.
I see that sparkle in your left eye. Shall we dance? For if knowledge is power, then a god am.
Batman himself has some strange characteristics. His attributes are rumored to be similar to the classical vampire. He can apparently disappear and reappear, and Gordon, played by Gary Oldman, makes it clear that he has a history of disappearing and reappearing.
How will you get him back anyway? He does that.
You know how to disappear. We can teach you to become truly invisible.
Invisible?
The things they say about him. Can he really fly?
I heard he can disappear.
And all of Gotham is wondering what to make of Batman. Friend or foe?
I have given a name to my pain, and it is Batman.
And disappear at will.
In The Dark Knight, this is left as only a hint, but in 1989's Batman, the hint is a little heavier. In that Batman, Batman was rumored to be a vampire that drank blood.
I heard the bat got him.
The bat? Oh, man, give me a break, will you?
5 stories straight down. There wasn't no blood in the body.
I don't know, let me guess. Giant, menacing, supernatural form. Kind of like a bat.
They say he can't be killed. They say he drinks blood. They say...
And although the movie The Mothman Prophecies is void of a single Mothman, Batman is not. Here's a slowed down scene from 2005's Batman Begins. In Batman Returns, Catwoman is killed by her boss, comes back to life looking extra pale, extremely strong, and goes bad. And Penguin, who runs the Red Triangle gang, declares war on Gotham's firstborn.
It's time. These are the names of the firstborn sons of Gotham City, just like I was. And like me, a terrible fate waits for them.
Like the Pharaoh from the Book of Exodus, he targets the firstborn, a rather arbitrary choice. Batman Returns even has some of the more conventional symbolism. But the Joker isn't a character unique to Batman. We've encountered this Joker character before, and since. The Joker's true name, or one of many, is Asmodeus. Asmodeus is portrayed as highly intelligent, extremely sadistic, and humorous. But first, here's the intro from the movie Spawn.
The battle between heaven and hell is waged eternal. Their armies fueled by souls harvested on Earth. The devil Malbolgia has sent a lieutenant to Earth to recruit men who will turn the world into a place of death in exchange for wealth and power. A place that will provide enough souls to complete his army and allow Armageddon to begin.
In Spawn, you've got this Joker kind of guy who's working for the devil. His job was to prepare Earth so that Spawn may lead Satan's army to heaven and destroy it. In the movie, Spawn is betrayed and killed by his boss, is sent to hell, and makes a deal with Satan to get a second chance for revenge and love so long as he leads Satan's army to attack heaven. Spawn agrees and returns to the land of the living with incredible abilities and a regenerative body made of a luminous material. Now the clown is kind of bitter because he believes that his likeness is closer to Satan's than Spawn's is, and that he should lead Satan's army. And although he's bitter, he's under strict orders to ensure that Spawn succeeds in all he does. Eventually, the tension surfaces. Spawn and the clown fight, Spawn wins, and refuses to play ball with Satan's plan, and the Earth is saved. This demonic clown has quite a bit in common with the Joker. Then there's Asmodeus, from the movie Gabriel. Gabriel is about an archangel named Gabriel, who was sent from heaven to do battle with demon villains. He arrives to find a dark, cruel world where his comrades, who are also angels, live in hiding and fear while demons rule humanity. After locating his superhero friends, he's disappointed to discover that they've discontinued their fight against evil, and now live in the shadows. Almost immediately after banding behind Gabriel, Asmodeus and Samael discover the Archangel's locations and begins picking them off in an effort to remove the forces of goodness so that the souls of the city will belong to the fallen. After a long, drawn-out crusade to kill the fallen one by one, Gabriel eventually works his way up to Samael, who he kills and dies with. Then there's Ozymandias, from Watchmen. Watchmen is about a group of crime-fighting superheroes who retire and go their separate ways. All but two of these superheroes, Ozymandias and Dr. Manhattan, keep their identity secret. Soon it appears that members of the retired supergroup, the Watchmen, are being targeted for assassination. It is eventually revealed that superhero and former colleague Ozymandias is behind the plan to neutralize his ex-partners so that he may bring about a massive change on a global scale by using a series of false flag terrorist attacks. Watchmen, similar to Gabriel, includes a superhero who's disappointed that his comrades who are retired, in hiding, and letting a potentially evil plot proceed unchallenged. But more than that, it includes two characters whose names sound similar, Asmodeus and Ozymandias. Not exactly a stretch. Still more, both are behind assassinations and rumored to be homosexual. Here's Adrian, aka Ozymandias, from Watchmen, hanging out with the village people.
Even Adrian fight. Possible homosexual.
Here's Asmodeus' play toy, who is obviously a man in drag, and in this scene definitely ties him to the Joker, and it was designed to. Just like the famous scene with Jack Nicholson looking into the mirror, Gabriel has this scene. And similar to Jack Nicholson's Joker, Asmodeus cuts up his human pet and refers to it as art.
It's fucking hideous.
She's not finished yet.
Why is she wearing a mask?
Well, she's just a sketch, really. She's a living work of art. I don't know Picasso, but do you like it?
Hints that Asmodeus is homosexual also come up in Spawn.
Get away from me, you punch-packing midget!
These 5 characters have quite a bit in common. 4 wear purple suits, 4 end up betraying the people he's working with, 3 are gay, 2 are concerned with gathering souls from Earth. Ozymandias from Watchmen has what appears to be a left eye on his belt, while Asmodeus from Gabriel gets his left eye gouged out, and all 5 run criminal organizations and are cold-hearted. My guess is, the true relationship between this character and the Joker is more accurately told in Spawn, where there's actually an agreement between the two. The Joker's most common role is to corrupt this main character by provoking him into making bad choices, rather than killing him. And even though Asmodeus recognizes Gabriel as an enemy angel, rather than fight him, he instead tries to corrupt him, and does so because he's under orders to do so.
Give this gentleman half price. I've got a feeling we'll be seeing him again.
Watchmen and Gabriel also have another character in common, Moloch, complete with odd-shaped ears, bald heads, and both working for the bad guys. Moloch was an ancient Canaanite god who is mentioned in the Bible as a pagan god whose followers would sacrifice their children to by throwing them in fire. Today, members of the Bohemian Grove gather to reenact this ancient ritual by burning a human in effigy. So who is Asmodeus? Asmodeus is mentioned in both the Hebrew Talmud and the Book of Tobit. He is considered to be one of the princes of hell, whose cardinal sin is lust, and he reportedly twists people's sexual desires. In the Talmud, he's even depicted as a humorous fellow who marries Lilith, another character in Gabriel. In Watchmen, Ozymandias runs a company called Pyramid International, and in the movie, creates a new world order by uniting the nations against Dr. Manhattan. But in the graphic novel, the crisis Ozymandias uses to unite the nations is a fake alien invasion. By the end, Ozymandias, who is obsessed with all things Egyptian, succeeds in his conspiracy, which results in world peace. Watchmen includes yet another character of Illuminati significance, Ra, the sun god, aka Dr. Manhattan. Dr. Manhattan, who chills out at the Rockefeller Military Research Center, is repeatedly connected to the sun god, Ra. And similar to Ra, the sun god from Egyptian mythology, Dr. Manhattan turns his back on humanity and leaves Earth, and humanity turns against him. So Dr. Manhattan retreats to Mars and constructs a flying machine that looks like the sun no matter which direction you're looking at it. Here's Ra, written out in Egyptian hieroglyphs. Notice the sun symbol, here. Now look at the symbol on Dr. Manhattan's forehead. This Egyptian symbol designates the sun. It's also worth noting that Ozymandias, Manhattan's buddy, has a belt adorned with the Eye of Ra. Even our old super friend, the reluctant Batman, shows up in Watchmen. More so than the graphic novel, the movie contains one of the biggest ripoffs of all time, The Night Owl 2, aka Batman, The Dark Knight. Daddy left him a pile of cash, an alter ego he and everybody else is afraid of, advanced gadgets and vigilante doodads in his basement, and some scenes are just plain insulting. Watchmen are an obvious reference to the Watchers, spoke about in the Bible, Book of Enoch, and numerous other texts as being beings who were sent to guide and protect mankind, but eventually go bad. Watchmen caters to conspiracy theorists. It includes pyramids, a new world order, Rockefeller Military Research Center where the sun god hangs out, a grassy knoll, Moloch, and a character called Mothman. In much of Alan Moore's work, the authorities are often more corrupt than the criminals. Masonic and Illuminist imagery is also common in his work. Watchmen is even capable of making double-thinkers out of the 9/11 aware by providing a reasonable excuse to use the false flag terror option. False flag terrorism is when a terrorist attack is conducted against one's own country or someone else's and is blamed on an innocent party. Adapted from the comic book, Hellboy is about a character named Hellboy, who's half human and half demon. He works for a group called the BPRD, which is the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense. The BPRD is a super-secret branch of the government involved with protecting the public against monsters and other paranormal threats. Hellboy came out of a portal from hell back during World War II and was raised by his adopted father, Trevor Broom. Hellboy has many attributes of the Antichrist. First, numerous mentions of him having been sent from hell to destroy Earth and usher in the apocalypse.
Demon, born from a womb of shadows, sent to destroy their world, and you still believe you belong.
Second, Hellboy's quote-unquote true name was Anung-Un-Rama, which means the Beast of the Apocalypse. The Antichrist is commonly referred to as the Beast or the Beast of the Sea in the Bible, and when told that his true name is inscribed on the chains that hold him,
your true name is inscribed around the locks that hold you.
All you can see are sixes. Sixes everywhere. 3 6s in a row, or 666, is referred to in the Bible as the mark of the beast and is associated with the Antichrist. Like the Antichrist from the Bible, Hellboy suffers a fatal wound and is healed. In Hellboy's case, he's healed by a dark angel with eyes all over him. This malevolent character heals Hellboy's fatal wound and warns that it's Hellboy's destiny to bring about the end of the world.
But you should know, it is his destiny to bring about the destruction of the earth.
According to Islamic tradition, Hellboy is further connected to the Antichrist. One of Islam's narrations includes a testimony of Tamim Dari from the Hadith of Fatima, where he arrived shipwrecked on an island and encountered the Antichrist, which the Muslims call Dajjal. They landed on the island, where they were met by a beast who was so hairy they could not tell its front from its back. It said, "I am Al-Jassasa." It said, "O people, go to this man in the monastery, for he is very eager to know about you." We quickly went to the monastery. There we found a huge man with his hands tied up to his neck and with iron shackles between his legs up to his ankles. In the same Islamic text, the Antichrist is further described as being large, with red complexion and one-eyed. Then I turned around and saw another man with a huge body, red complexion, curly hair, and one eye. His other eye looked like a floating grape. And here we see Hellboy, extremely muscular, red complexion, dubbed the Beast of the Apocalypse, chained up in what appears to be a church or a cathedral. Hellboy also has roots in Egyptian mythology. The first Hellboy film sounds a bit like the story of Osiris, Anubis, and Set. According to Egyptian myth, Anubis is Set's son, but adopted by Osiris. Anubis is the god of the dead, usually depicted as a jackal-headed man. Set kills Osiris like Rasputin kills Trevor Broom, and tells Hellboy that he is his father.
Child. All grown up, I see.
That voice.
It was the first lullaby you ever heard, my son.
And as you would expect from the god of the dead, Hellboy practices necromancy and is capable of reanimating dead corpses. The Muslims also claim that the Antichrist practices necromancy. Necromancy is enlisting the assistance of, or communicating with, the dead. And Hellboy 2 seems to include the Egyptian gods Nut, Geb, and the sun god. Here's the intro to Hellboy 2.
The blood of many an elf, ogre, and goblin was spilled in their war with man. And King Balor, the one-armed king of Elfland, watched the slaughter in dread and despair. The master of the goblin blacksmiths offered to build the king a golden mechanical army. "Build me this army," the king said. The golden army had no remorse, and King Balor's heart grew heavy with regret. So he called a truce and divided the crown in 3 pieces, 1 for the humans and 2 for himself.
This story of a king who unleashes a powerful weapon against mankind and then regrets it sounds like the story of Ra, the sun god from Egyptian mythology. According to legend, the sun god Ra was angered by humanity's disobedience to his rule, so he sent his daughter, Sekhmet, who was called the Eye of Ra, to tame rebelling humanity. But after seeing the carnage that Sekhmet caused on Earth, his heart filled with regret and pity. So he tricked Sekhmet to stopping her rampage by getting her drunk. Sekhmet was depicted as a woman in a red dress, with a lion's head, and was said to have been made from the fiery eye of Ra. Sekhmet went by such flattering titles as the Eye of Ra, the Scarlet Lady, the Lady of Flame, and the Lady of Slaughter. The Egyptian gods Geb and Nut also appear in Hellboy 2 as Prince and Princess Nuana. In ancient tales, Geb and Nut were twins and also married. This union angered Ra and commanded his son and their father, Shu, shown here, to see to it that the two remain separate. In this scene, the brother and sister act as if they also have a sexual relationship.
I can feel that much from you. Father always tried so hard to shield your heart from mine.
Here's Geb below and Nut above, with their father Shu separating them. The goddess Nut is typically depicted in a tight-fitting blue dress, just like Princess Nuana's. Geb, the god of the earth, is typically depicted with leaves, and here's Prince Nuana standing in front of what appears to be foliage. Even our old friend Asmodeus makes an appearance as Karl Cronin, who, in the movie, is Hitler's top assassin and head of the Thule Occult Society. Lilith shows up too, as Ilsa.
Forget what you think you know. Vampires exist.
Blade, brought to you by Amun-Ra Films, has a similar theme to Hellboy. A bit more than a theme, in fact. Blade is about a character called Blade, played by Wesley Snipes, who is half human and half vampire. He works for a small, secret group of vampire hunters. Standing against him, a vast conspiracy of vampires who are out to kill him and subdue humanity. The first Blade film sounds like the first Hellboy film, the story of Set, Osiris, and Anubis. Blade, who was essentially adopted by a man named Whistler at a young age, does not drink human blood like his vampire contemporaries, but subdues his thirst with feel-good juice he buys from a guy with an all-seeing eye shaved into his head. Blade, as Anubis, was adopted by Osiris, but was fathered by Set and mothered by Nephthys, Set's wife. Here, Blade finds himself in a room with his mother and a character called Frost.
You spent your whole life looking for the vampire who bit your mother. Well, here I am. And here we are. One big happy fucking family.
Frost kills Whistler just like Set kills Osiris. Blade also includes the always essential Asmodeus and Lilith. This three-pack of 2 male villains and 1 female or extremely effeminate villain is quite common. Blade and Hellboy themselves have quite a bit in common. Both are in secret agencies that hunt monsters. Both are half human, half something else. Both hunt their own kind. Both need an escort at all times. Both prefer violence rather to negotiation. Both adopted fathers have cancer, and both are referred to as the Key and Chosen Ones. And in both movies, the main villain intends on capturing him rather than killing him so that he may bring forth a powerful and evil god. And just like Blade 1 and Hellboy 1 resemble each other, Blade 2 and Hellboy 2 follow suit. In Blade 2, the main villain is a guy called Nomak, played by Luke Goss. Nomak's sister, who works for Vampire Nation, teams up with Blade to hunt and kill Nomak. Nomak has many characteristics of Hellboy's Prince Nuada, aka Geb. Both start off in the sewers. Both are referred to as princes. Both are exceedingly powerful. Both are ordered dead by their father. Both fathers are connected to the exact same sun symbolism. Both kill their father. Both fathers become solid objects as they shatter and die. Both attempt to form an alliance. Both played by the same actor, Luke Goss. And, after an extended battle, both die at the same time on the same day as their sister. Even Blade's assistant is seen wearing a shirt that says BPRD, the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense, the very same agency and very same symbol from Hellboy. And the same guy who wrote Hellboy 2, Guillermo del Toro, directed Blade 2. David S. Goyer, who wrote all 3 of the Blade scripts, also wrote Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. And similar to Anubis and Osiris, his adopted father, Blade finds and helps bring back to life Whistler, who apparently suffered a fatal injury. Like Egyptian mythology where Osiris is killed by Set, comes back with the help of Anubis, lives a short while, then is killed again. In Blade 3, the vampires are working overtime to find and awaken a sleeping god, Dagon or Drake. Here's a quick bio on Drake.
Dracula's only one of the names he's gone by. The Babylonians worshipped him as Dagon, and now they call him Drake. If you believe in the legends, he was born in ancient Sumeria. He was the first of his kind. The patriarch of Hominis Nocturna. He was born perfect. And just like the great white shark, this guy has never had to evolve. Forget the movies, forget the books. There's no happy ending with this guy. He's been there, moving behind the scenes, cutting a bloody fucking path through the ages until suddenly he up and disappeared.
There's a couple scenes that connect him to the sun god and to the all-seeing eye. And he tells a fellow vampire, Donna Katalos, to take off her cross.
Why do you wear that symbol? Take it off.
Why?
I will make you a better one.
Dagon is an ancient Amorite and Sumerian god first recorded 4,500 years ago. Dagon is mentioned in the Bible as the god and king of the Philistines. Horus appears to be played by a woman, Abigail Whistler, seen here standing in front of posters with falcons on them, and here standing next to a TV that says Sun and the Moon. Horus is depicted as a man with the head of a falcon, and it is said that Horus's right eye is the sun, while his left eye is the moon, and that the moon is so much dimmer because of Horus's fight with Set that left his left eye damaged.
I like your tattoos. Do they mean anything?
Well, they may, because if you look at the tattoos, they appear to be sixes, like Hellboy's true name. The Lion King is yet another film that appears to be derived from Egyptian mythology. It appears to be the story of Set, Osiris, and Horus. The Lion King is about a place in the Africa savanna called the Pride Lands. Populated by every sort of creature in peace and prosperity, the Pride Lands is ruled over by a lion named Mufasa. Then you have his brother, Scar, who is jealous of Mufasa's popularity. He eventually hatches a plan to get Mufasa and his son Simba killed so that he may rule the Pride Lands. His plan partly succeeds as Mufasa is trampled to death, and his son and heir to the throne, Simba, hides in exile. Scar, now the ruler of the Pride Lands, merges it with his own kingdom of hyenas. Scar's reign soon becomes a failure as disaster and famine strike the Pride Lands. Simba, now older, returns to the Pride Lands, has a massive battle with Scar, and reclaims the throne. This is exactly the story of the Egyptian gods Set, Osiris, and Horus. Osiris was the ruler of Lower Egypt during a time of peace, prosperity, and justice. His jealous brother Set ruled Upper Egypt and hated Osiris's rule and popularity. Set is the Egyptian god of chaos, storms, and evil. Egyptian mythology is terribly inconsistent from text to text, Set being among the few exceptions. He's universally considered dark and evil. In this song, Be Prepared, Scar's lair looks increasingly like hell.
So prepare for the coup of the century. Be prepared for the murkiest scam. Meticulous planning, tenacity spanning, decades of denial.
Set soon conspires to kill his brother Osiris in a remote place with no witnesses, just as Scar did. But Set only partially succeeds, because Horus, the son of Osiris, was still alive and fled into hiding. Set merges Upper and Lower Egypt and begins ruling them both, and brings both to failure. Eventually, Horus returns. A great battle ensues where Horus's eye is injured by Set, and alas, Horus defeats him. Some Egyptian texts even claim Set had Osiris trampled to death, just as Mufasa and Whistler were. Tomb Raider, starring Angelina Jolie, shown here zooming out from the right eye, is basically the chronicles of a female Indiana Jones. The first Tomb Raider contains the rather overt Illuminati symbolism.
The people of the light built a great city in this crater where they worshipped the triangle for its ability to control time. It gave its possessor a power that could be used for good or great evil. Their abuse of this power led to the destruction of the city. To be sure no man would ever again wield this power, they split the triangle into two pieces and hid them at opposite ends of the earth. With a secret society known as the Illuminati, devious, dangerous men who seek to fulfill an ancient prophecy by reuniting the two halves and attaining the triangle's awesome and terrible powers.
In Hellboy 2, the unstoppable weapon was Sekhmet, the Eye of Ra, who was so dangerous and powerful that control of it was split into three pieces. In Tomb Raider, it's the Triangle of Light, sporting an all-seeing eye, and that was so dangerous and powerful that control of it was split into three pieces. The all-seeing eye, portrayed as a non-sentient ultimate weapon, is quite common. Tomb Raider has traces of yet another familiar story, the story of Set, Osiris, and Horus, with Laura as a female Horus. In legend, Set kills Osiris in a remote place with no witnesses, like Lara Croft's father was killed, and as usual, Set is attempting to reach godhood. At the end, the final battle of who would rule between Horus and Set, Lara Croft and Manfred Powell race to the top of a pyramid. Like Lion King, Horus is victorious. Conan the Barbarian includes heavy use of eye and serpent symbolism. Conan the Barbarian is about a warrior named Conan, played by the talentless Arnold Schwarzenegger, whose family is killed by a guy named Thulsa Doom. Conan is captured and turned into a hooligan. He's eventually set free and immediately proceeds on an adventure of revenge. He locates and sneaks into Thulsa Doom's lair, which is called Set's Mountain of Power in the movie, and kills him. This story sounds like yet another retelling of Horus versus Set conflict. Set kills Horus's father, Osiris, and Horus spends the rest of his time gaining revenge and reclaiming his throne. Thulsa Doom, played by James Earl Jones, is connected to the Egyptian god Set so often in the film that it's kind of implied that he is Set.
The only snakes I know of are those of Set and those cursed towers. They have spread to every city. 2-3 years ago, it was just another snake cult. Now, everywhere. It is said that they are deceivers. They murder people in the night.
A man who would someday be king by his own hand. One who would crush the snakes of the earth.
Snakes? Did you say snakes?
Conan has traces of the man who would be king, too, where Conan arrives with a special charm on his neck and is singled out. In Conan, Set's symbol is two connected serpents facing each other against the sun, whereas in The Man Who Would Be King, it was two connected serpents facing away. Also, a familiar theme unfolds as Conan dies and comes back to life. The general characteristics of the Antichrist in film is as follows. He's mistaken for a god, egocentric and vain, insensitive with bad people skills, uses violence as a solution, dies or suffers a severe injury. He may have a past life because of having died and come back. A moral failure in a cave, or made stronger in a cave, and goes bad. Very powerful, an excellent warrior. Has identifying mark, maybe wearing red. Impulsive, a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of guy for sure. Can read minds and sense emotions. May find himself working for the bad guy or teaming up with him. At some point, may be underwater, usually thrown in the water, or arriving by boat. This symbolism is used because he is the beast from the sea. Usually finds himself at a train station, airport, or some other kind of port. May be hunted by two opposing sides. At some point, this character meets a witch doctor, tries to spare the innocent, can see in the dark, has special heritage, half human, half something, etc. Sordid past, and popular with women. The main villain may want to rule with him as opposed to killing him. This character's biblical name is the Beast of the Earth. In the Bible, this character enforces the power structure of the Antichrist, and, naturally, is often depicted as coming from below. This character is also extremely powerful, highly intelligent, bent on pure destruction, has disdain for life, and is often connected to the sun and all-seeing eye. It's not likely that the Illuminati, who has managed to commandeer the world, are obsessed with fictitious characters and fictitious events born from myth and legend. What's more likely is that they are obsessed with real characters and real events while making us obsessed with their fictional counterparts. And if, after all of this, you still don't believe something very strange and very real is being told, I can't help you. Well, I hope you learned a bit about the movies you watch, and maybe even the world around you. And now, it's your turn to share with others what you know. Good luck, and thanks for watching.
couple months ago, from one of my Hollywood sources, I was sent the early treatment / boiled down script of Prometheus. And it's all about humans' origins. Did aliens create us? One of the most anticipated films in a long time. It's coming out tomorrow. So we're going to restream a piece I did a few months ago with Aaron Dykes, The Secrets of Prometheus film leaked. And they're talking about how it's designing our future and showing us with predictive programming what things are going to look like in the future. Ridley Scott, who made Blade Runner and so many other seminal films, I was able to get an early boiled-down script of this and was able to, accurately tell you it's about, did aliens or did God create humanity? And now Ridley Scott has come out and said, well, yeah, that's basically what the film is, and it's a prequel of sorts. And so, yes, now I'm seeing the spoilers and the reviews from sneak peeks. We did get a real script, but I didn't spoil it for everyone. This is obviously an Illuminati message, but within that Illuminati message, you can understand why they want to become God, why they are endangering us with genetic engineering and nanotech and all the rest of it, because they believe they've got to do this or die trying to ascend, that if they don't, they won't ever gain that life extension technology system. The controllers of this globe are at least 30 years ahead of us technologically. That's why they're so arrogant right now. But remember, you're still human too. You've made a lot of mistakes, globalist, and from my research, there's a good chance you're going to destroy yourselves and all of us along with you. Films like Prometheus are basically where we see the revelation of the method via the Illuminati, and that's why this film is important, and I'll be watching it tomorrow and then being able to give you a full review on the Sunday show, 4 to 6 p.m. But if you're out there watching on the web and want to see a deeper analysis of all of this, be sure you check out prisonplanet.tv, where we have 15-day free trials running right now. And by putting in some of your Energon cubes, you fund us in our ongoing effort to build a stronger media operation. All right, let's go ahead and go to our breakdown of Prometheus.
Ridley Scott, arguably one of the greatest living directors, is set to release a prequel to his 1979 mega hit, Alien, Prometheus. One of the most anticipated sci-fi films in recent memory. Infowars.com research analysis shows Prometheus is not just a film, but a revelation of the method, revealing the deepest secrets of the Illuminati mystery religion. I do have a lot of contacts in the media, as viewers and listeners know, and I have been able to secure a copy of an early script, and it follows very closely from the trailer I've seen and other leaks. And I'm not going to give the entire film away here, but in synopsis, this is a film about the origins of humankind with a super race of near immortal genetic engineers who are contemplating a genetic overwrite or rewrite of the planet Earth. When meddling humans stumble in to the magician's laboratory, they are punished for their trespass.
It was so wrong.
The so-called space jockey is the advanced species that have engineered humans back on Earth and produced the bioweapon that we know of as the classical alien that burst out of your chest after feeding on the food in your intestines. The reason we're taking time out to examine Prometheus is because its storyline, its plot, mirrors that of many ancient societies. And the ideas presented in Prometheus are at the core of Western secret societies.
These are ancient civilizations that were separated by centuries, and yet this same pictogram was discovered in every one of them.
Please tell me you can read that.
I think they want us to come and find them.
Across the world, we see evidence of early civilizations' obsession with what they believed were off-world influences. From the Nazca lines in South America to the pyramids of Egypt, we see artifacts, testament to early man's obsession with off-world manipulators. Every ancient culture believed they were communicating with men from the sky. Ezekiel with spinning wheels of fire landing and creatures with blue space helmets approaching Ezekiel and giving him a drug to take, and then he has wild hallucinations. One could say that Prometheus is simply art imitating life and putting a 21st century spin on the beliefs of the Dogon tribe in Africa and the Aztecs of Mesoamerica. Eric von Däniken, more than any other living person, has popularized the idea of chariots of the gods, and that our planet has been visited and manipulated by off-world creatures for thousands of years. But the systems that he popularized were regurgitated whole cloth from ideas developed by the ruling class of this planet. And I want to be clear, every major globalist we look at, going back more than 160 years, is completely and totally obsessed with the idea that off-world aliens are controlling this planet and giving them hidden knowledge. By the 1870s, T.H. Huxley Group and their X Club was dominating the Royal Society in England. The dominant theory within the X Club was that humans had been seeded here, along with most other life forms, by advanced beings from space. From the inception of Darwin's theory on the origin of species, evolutionary scientists never believed for a minute that life simply started on its own. That evolution is not some random, slow system developing by chance, but is actually directed by off-world seeders, terraformers, creators of worlds. Even the discoverer of DNA, Francis Crick, promotes the idea that life was seeded on this planet in what he calls directed panspermia. It is part of the larger myth of transhumanism. Huxley, Darwin, Wedgwood, the Galtons, they all interbred in an attempt to create this transcendent Superman. The governing class of this globe believes that they are channeling advanced technological systems given to them by ancient alien species. And the science fiction of the last 150 years, whether it's Jules Verne or H.G. Wells or those that came before them, is obsessed with this, and they're on record part of secret societies who believe what they're promoting is actually reality, but knowing that the public is not ready to accept it, they cover it under the guise of fiction. And the film Prometheus is completely constructed around the secret religion of the Illuminati, who believe that they are transcendent and becoming the Superman.
We can create cybernetic individuals. We are the gods now.
Blurring the lines between fiction and reality, we see a futuristic presentation of the technology conference TED. The keynote speaker is the founder of the Wayland Corporation, Mr. Wayland. There he describes Prometheus stealing fire from the gods.
From the Titan Prometheus, our first true piece of technology, fire.
The transference of fire, or the first technology to man, is only the beginning of his transgressions. Prometheus is a titan and the creator of mankind who attempts to elevate humans to the level of gods and is punished. The Illuminati believe they have stolen the fire of true genius from the gods.
Biotech, nanotech, fusion.
As man attempts to become godlike, we release potential forces that can and probably will destroy us. I want to say this in summation. We're not facing off-world genetic engineers that the elite believes created this planet, whether that's true or not. We're facing the global technocrats that are splicing every plant and animal and insect you can imagine together, that are creating chimeras with hundreds of species within them, giving rise to superviruses and bacterial mutations. We are already seeing within 3 generations in rodents total sterilization and massive deformities in these animals. And we have proven from the Rockefeller Foundation documents and other reports that this is part of a long-term program to wreck the general public's DNA. This is the global elite who have fantasized about off-world genetic engineers, creating them, actually in a 160-year-plus program, developing the sciences and technologies to put this into place. Whatever you say about the Illuminati, they have got patience and they have had incredible vision. But I believe humanity needs to hear the truth and understand that this is being carried out against us all. Because we have a choice to stand up now, but only a short window, and say no. I know the plot of the film. I know how it ends. But I'm going to leave that for you to discover. The point is, the film itself is only a revelation of the method, an externalization of the hierarchy. The Illuminati is simply a older term for social engineers, those that are illuminated, those that know how humans work, those that pay attention to the knowledge gained by past generations instead of going through the same mistakes over and over again. And they use their knowledge to control human populations and undoubtedly dumb us down and hurt us, because the globalists, the Illuminati, the social engineers have found that if we're empowered and are truly enlightened, they're not going to be able to dominate us. So they are committing the ultimate sin. They are actually trying to keep us from getting the fire of Prometheus. They are the anti-Prometheus. You are not illuminated. You seek darkness. You want to have the knowledge and keep it from us. But if you truly have the knowledge, you would understand that we need to empower humanity and that darkness is not the answer. So I indict the Illuminati. As usual, everything about you is a lie. You are not illuminated. You are unilluminated. You are darkness. What's the Latin word for darkness? What's the Latin word for lies? That should be the new name of the Illuminati. Lies and darkness in Latin. How do you say lies in Latin? How do you say darkness in Latin? We'll look for that answer and come back to that in a little while. We're looking it up right now. What is the Latin for darkness? Noctum Eternium, Nox Eternia, Eternia. So Nox, I guess, would be darkness. Nox, and then what's lies in doing this live to tape here, folks. Let's look up lies in Latin. Mendacium. So Nox Mendacium. Nox Mendacium. Dark lies. And if the New World Order has its takeover, it will mean eternal darkness. That's what they seek, is death and pain and destruction. And for those of us that love life, there's always something shimmering and otherworldly and almost sexy about the darkness. But once you have swam in those waters, you will find that you're only seeing the shimmer of light on the surface of the dark, and it's that shimmer of light on the outside of the darkness, on the outside of the black hole, that you see is beautiful. There is nothing in the darkness but death and destruction. Original thought there, ladies and gentlemen, not plagiarized, I will assure you. But I'll guarantee you can go find some philosophers who said the same thing. Because truth is eternal. Veritas. I don't need to know what that is in Latin.
Wake up, cousin! We're going to the zoo!
fucking snitch.
Like this book.
You catch this, Potter, and we win.
Right then. Right. Okay. Griffin!
The birthday boy!
Happy birthday, son.
It's deadly fun, but we'll sulk in the sun, that's it! Devil Snare hates sunlight. Lumos Solem!
3 months in here, can't catch the tears. Time never lands. Our love is all that stands now. Streets feel strange, and longer lines can never change. I'm so glad to have you, and it's getting worse. I'm so mad to love you, and your evil curse. I feel out of place. Just look at my face. Stuck in the mud.
Goldie? Did you say wing attack plan R?
R for Robert, to the wing.
Swallow's fine. Better, actually.
Do you want to read it?
No.
There were once 3 brothers who were traveling along a lonely, winding road at twilight. In time, the brothers reached a river too treacherous to pass. But being learned in the magical arts, the 3 brothers simply waved their wands and made a bridge. Before they could cross, however, they found their path blocked by a hooded figure. It was Death, and he felt cheated. Cheated because travelers would normally drown in the river, but Death was cunning. He pretended to congratulate the 3 brothers on their magic, and said that each had earned a prize for having been clever enough to evade him. The oldest asked for a wand more powerful than any in existence, so Death fashioned him one from an elder tree that stood nearby. The second brother decided he wanted to humiliate Death even further, and asked for the power to recall loved ones from the grave. So Death plucked a stone from the river and offered it to him. Finally, Death turned to the third brother. A humble man, he asked for something that would allow him to go forth from that place without being followed by Death. And so it was that Death reluctantly handed over his own cloak of invisibility. The first brother traveled to a distant village, where with the elder wand in hand, he killed the wizard with whom he had once quarreled. Drunk with the power that the elder wand had given him, he bragged of his invincibility. But that night, another wizard stole the wand and slit the brother's throat for good measure. And so Death took the first brother for his own. The second brother journeyed to his home, where he took the stone and turned it thrice in hand. To his delight, the girl he'd once hoped to marry before her untimely death appeared before him. Yet soon she turned sad and cold, for she did not belong in the mortal world. Driven mad with hopeless longing, the second brother killed himself so as to join her. And so Death took the second brother. As for the third brother, Death searched for many years but was never able to find him. Only when he attained a great age did the youngest brother shed the cloak of invisibility and give it to his son. He then greeted Death as an old friend and went with him gladly, departing this life as equals.
So there you are. Those are the deathly arrows. I'm sorry, sir, I still don't quite understand.
who controls the web? The spider controls the web. And the spider is at a level that you never see. It's not Tony Blair, he's a strand. The Bush family, they're a strand. Even the Rockefellers are a strand. The real power that's manipulating all this, you never see. It operates from the shadows. So it's operating to a central dictated policy. And this is why you're seeing the same things happen in all different countries at the same time. It's because the orders and the policy are coming from a central point. We can work on the level of banking scams, political scams, manipulated wars, manipulated 9/11s, and we should, because we need to know that. But if that's all we're doing in terms of communicating knowledge, then basically we're operating in a cycle of this is the problem, but how the hell do we get out of this? We will never know how to set ourselves free until we understand the nature of who we bloody well are. How do you set yourself free when you don't even know you are? How do you set yourself free when you don't even know the nature of reality that you're living in and manifesting and making happen without your knowledge that you're making it happen? You can't. So alongside the information about, the 5 sense level of this conspiracy, if you like, we have to just as powerfully, I would say more powerfully, communicate the nature of reality and how we are creating our reality and how we are allowing it to be created for us by having ourselves programmed with certain beliefs, certain perceptions, and all the rest of it all the time. The two must go together, otherwise, we're never going to get out of this. If I tell you that's a computer and you are infinite consciousness, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. I'm telling you what you've forgotten. Because what happens is you come into this world and with this knowledge suppressed, it's like someone once said, you imagine you come into the world and someone tells you that 2 and 2 equals 5. Your parents tell you that from the earliest age, 2 and 2 equals 5. You then go to kindergarten and nice teachers tell you that 2 and 2 equals 5. You then go to school and teachers at junior school, senior school, they tell you 2 and 2 equals 5. By now, all your mates who've been through the same system, they're telling you 2 and 2 equals 5, and if you say it equals 4, they laugh at you. You then go to university, and professors with letters after the name, moustaches, they say 2 and 2 equals 5, Oh, no, it equals 4. No, I've been doing this 50 years. I've met all the best brains in the world. It equals 5. That boy will not go far. And then you turn the telly on, and someone's going, good evening, 2 and 2 equals 5. Now the weather, right? There's a good chance that you'll go through the whole of your life believing 2 and 2 equals 5, but it still equals 4. And what this information about the nature of reality is doing, basically it's saying, do you remember 2 and 2? 4. Oh yes! And this is why this has such an impact on people. When they hear it, something goes, this is true. This is true, because they're remembering it. We are in a world in which the vast majority of the population is in an amnesic state. They are in a hypnotic trance because they have been implanted with false information about themselves and the world ever since they arrived. All freedom is our natural and eternal right, not the gift of some dark suit or uniform to decide if it's going to give it to us or not. And so this is also not a day for being intimidated and frightened by this big brother crap.
and all these goons in uniform who seek to impose someone else's will upon us. It's just about exposing the way they're seeking to enslave us so we can see the game and therefore not play it. In fact, my attitude to Big Brother can be summed up thus.
Oh, Big Brother, oh my God!
God, sod that for a lot.